Ladies and gentlemen, have no fear. On this episode, I intend to find out just what kind of American Nick is. Hang tight. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a brand new episode of Two Peas on a Podcast where we review the latest and sometimes greatest movies every week. Gerald here with you. And of course, on the flip side is the other P on the pod, the President of the United States of America, who's hiding behind his desk. Nick is back after leaving me for a couple weeks. I'm pretty emotional, but here he is. What's up, brother?
We're at war. It's the P Civil War. I'm Team Cap, so you got to be Team Iron Man.
Hey, I wore an Avengers shirt unironically tonight.
Wow. Yeah, no, we're at war. We're facing off against each other. We're facing each other down.
Okay.
I'm sorry for what's going to happen to you and your family, Gerald. Cheers, buddy. I missed you. I missed all the audience. What's up? What's up, everybody?
Cheers, brother. Nick had to take a couple weeks off, guys. He got a lot of stuff on his plate over there. I want to thank producer Dan, who crawled out of the shadows from the editing room to get on the mic last week and discuss Monkey Man with me,
and
even though his
watched
takes,
the movie.
He did, which is the win for everybody. His take was horrible, but it was good to have him on the show. So Dan, always involved in the show, of course, but it was great to have him on the mic last week. So thank you so much, buddy, for being here for that.
I bet Dan, I haven't listened to it yet because I want to see Monkey Man yet, but I bet Dan was right because I just know you and your ridiculousness. So
God,
I bet Dan nailed it.
Now, that leads to an interesting segue because is this going to be the Peace Civil War tonight, or is this going to be a happy, harmonious photographing of our review? I don't know. We'll see. We're going to be discussing Alex Garland's latest film, Civil War.
His final
I
don't
know. What do you think? I don't know. I mean, he said that, but
listen. That's a weird way to get press for your film that's coming out. Like that's a weird way to try to promote your film that's coming out, being like, you know what, this job sucks. I quit. Like, that's a real weird way to do it. You know,
it's just a tough thing. You know, it's different with somebody like Tarantino, who's like, all right, I've done 10 features. Like, I mean, he's been in the game for decades. But I mean, Alex Garland, this is only like his fourth feature, I think, maybe fifth. But I mean, it's just such a small filmography, and whether you like or dislike these movies, I mean, they're made so well, and he brings so much out of these actors, and I don't know. I just think it would be a shame because I feel like he's one of the voices in Hollywood that really does a good job. You know, regardless of what you think of the narrative, the films are beautiful. I think I Hated Men that came out a few years ago, but it was a really good-looking movie. And it was well made, so I hope he stays in the game.
I didn't get to see Men, but I mean, I love Ex Machina. I think Ex Machina is amazing. What was the other one?
Annihilation.
Annihilation. Yeah, Annihilation was.
I love that one.
Good. Like it was good, but I don't think it was great. I think it was kind of weird and sluggish, and I don't know. It had some weird stuff going on to it, and not like psychic talking skeleton bears or whatever the hell was in that movie. I might be combining a few different things in my head. I don't know.
No, you're close. That's pretty close actually. It was like a mimicking skeletal bear.
That's right. Yeah, like it like mimicked somebody's voice or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah, the screams and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Alex Garland's back at it. He has got a new movie which is very polarizing, very divisive. I mean, even if you go on social media, which I mean, I hate to do these days, but it's like one post will be like the greatest movie of all time, and the next post will be like, man, what a shit show. So we'll see kind of where we fall. It seems to be all over the place in terms of like the critical acclaim for it. So we'll check on that here in a second. But before we get there, Nick, of course, we like to start out every review by going over to social media and seeing what our fans had to ask us this week in one big question.
You've got to ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
Yeah, alrighty. What do you got, man?
So, Gerald, I picked one out from Brett from Dissect That Film. Love you, Brett.
Ooh,
Shout out. Is Alex Garland a better writer or director? Now, obviously, this will plug a little bit into what we're going to be talking about for this movie, but going back, obviously, the filmography we're just talking about, better writer or better director? I have a very definitive opinion on this, but I want to know where you stand first.
That's a great question. My initial response is director. And I think I say that because I'm more kind of taken back with his visuals and directing style and choices that he makes with the camera. I don't necessarily know that there's any like dialogue that really sticks with me. Like obviously the Jesse Plemons scene, and we'll get into that when we get into our review, and some, other scenes with Natalie Portman and Annihilation. And like, I do remember lines of dialogue. That's not what I mean, but I think more so it just sticks with me, the direction that he employs. That's why I was saying earlier that I hope he kind of sticks in the game and makes more movies. But what about you, man?
It's director, 100%, like by
Yeah.
far. I think his writing is probably the weakest part of his movies. I think that's what let Annihilation down. We'll talk about writing in this movie, obviously, as we get there. Ex Machina, probably for me, is his best written movie and best directed movie. I really think that's as close to a really, really, truly, like, incredible, like, perfect, like, 10 out of 10 kind of, I forget what I rated that movie. It had to be like 8 or 9 or something like that, though. I really love that movie. And I haven't seen Men, of course, so I can't really speak to that. He wrote that abysmal Dread movie that came out like 12 years ago that I really, really
I know
hate,
you love that one.
that everybody else loves, but I'm like, it's literally 95 minutes of nothing. You can tell they had a budget of $6 and it did nothing. Give me Stallone's Dread any day of the week. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's like you said, he has a very, very distinctive visual style. He has a very immersive type of filmmaking. This film showcases it a lot. But even in Annihilation, especially in Ex Machina, he's got a way of putting the audience kind of in there in the action a little bit. His sound design is always absolutely incredible. The way his films are shot is always absolutely incredible. I mean, he's got a very, very, I wouldn't say distinctive visual style. I don't think if you just put up to, I don't know if I could necessarily just say like, oh, this looks like an Alex Garland movie. I don't know if I could say that. I think his films have a realism to the way that they're shot. I'm probably struggling for the exact kind of description I'm looking for in terms of that, but I don't know if I could necessarily say, oh, this looks like an Alex Garland movie, though. I don't necessarily know if he's got, like, if you think about like a George Miller, like making a Mad Max movie or something,
Sure, yeah.
Whatever else. Like, there's other directors that have very distinctive visual styles, and I don't necessarily think Garland's one of them, but.
Yeah, I think I was kind of thinking of that too when I was coming up with my answer to that question when you asked me a couple minutes ago, and I agree with you. I don't know, because like you could look at this movie, which of course we'll be talking about, and you could look at a movie like Ex Machina, and they don't really look the same, but they still have that kind of Garland feel to them. So it's kind of hard to explain and kind of put into words. But I agree with you that you can't, if you didn't know the director and you go into it and you see it, you wouldn't go, oh, this must be Alex Garland. You know what I mean? He's kind of been all over the place with his 4 films.
Yeah.
But, they're all top tier in terms of direction. So that's my answer as well. Over on the Facebook fan page, Nick, Jared Taylor, patron of the show. Jared, we love you, brother. He says, is there a movie that hits too close to home for you? And if so, what is it? Do you think you have one there for that, Nick?
Too close to home for me. Probably the last one that I watched, there's probably several examples I could come up for this, and this is the only one that just popped out into my head, would be Marriage Story. I think the first time I watched that movie was like right after like my separation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so like that movie like wrecked me in like a lot of ways when I first watched it. It's fantastic. It's absolutely phenomenal movie. But like tapping into, especially with like my emotional state at the time, probably even now, but like my emotional state at the time and everything like that, of just all the anger and frustration and everything that I felt. And my divorce wasn't nearly as bad as the one in the film was, but that one definitely touched way too close to home for me.
Mine is kind of a juvenile answer because I kind of had to come up with it on the fly. But have you ever seen Waiting with Ryan Reynolds?
No.
The comedy with him and Justin Long and their servers in a restaurant. And it's a comedy. And it's about all the kind of behind the scenes stuff that servers and cooks and restaurants and the restaurant manager and everything that they kind of go through and the parties they have after work. And there's some stuff that happens in that movie that's kind of gross in terms of like food service. And some of it was just kind of like, ooh, it just makes you cringe having been in that business for so long. So that's the first one that popped in my mind was Waiting. I do love that movie, but I can remember watching it. It just brings back some kind of like gross memories from being in food service. So that would be my kind of answer on the fly there. Waiting with Ryan Reynolds. By the way, you should watch that because I know you love restaurants and food and cooking and everything. You'd probably get a kick out of that movie. It's a very behind the scenes kind of snapshot of that life, restaurant life.
There's like a lot of different there's just a lot of different movies that really tap into just hit too close to home with me. Dear Evan Hansen was another one that I watched recently. And what was the one with Jillian Bell that was on Amazon where she's like a big girl that becomes a marathon runner? Brittany runs a marathon.
Brittany
that
runs
one.
A marathon, yeah.
Holy dude, like that movie, I was on a floor, like in a ball, like curled up in a ball, sobbing, like after watching that movie. Because like as a big dude myself, like that movie does something that a lot of movies just don't do when it captures people that have like problems with food and like addictions with food and stuff like that, like where she's like literally like walks by the garbage can, somebody threw away like cheese fries and she like scoops it up and eats it. Like a lot of people really don't understand, like if you're not somebody that's big and if you're not somebody who has an unhealthy relationship with food at times, like it's not something that would necessarily jump out at somebody else as like as such a thing. Like that, I like legit, like I was like almost on the floor, like curled up in a ball, like sobbing after I watched that movie because it was like that was a good one. So like rough movie.
Hit close to home. Yeah, like the question said. Yeah, I remember that. I think that was a COVID film too. I think that came out during the COVID
Yes,
era,
it did. Yep.
So it was streaming right away. So I remember that one. It was a good flick. But I can see how that one would have touched you as well. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for submitting the questions as always. If you want to get involved, check the show notes, join up to the Facebook fan page, the Discord, etc. And at the end of this episode, actually, we will be spinning the roulette wheel because next week we are taking a break from the theater going experience, and we're going to let the patrons or Nick or myself pick a movie to review next week, and it can be any film. It doesn't have to be a current release. And we'll see if it lands on our patrons, which we love you guys so much, or myself or Nick, and we will talk about that at the end of the episode. All right, Nick, the main review, as you are returning to the show. By the way, this is episode number 250. This is 250 of Two Peas on a Podcast.
I didn't plan anything to celebrate.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But I guess it is a bit of a milestone. So I think this is a movie that needs to be talked about, and we're going to find out what we thought about it, of course, and we'll discuss it. But I think regardless, before we even do the score and all that stuff, I think regardless of the scores that we give it, I think this is a movie that is going to be fun to talk about. Would you agree? Do you understand what I'm saying there? Like, I feel like it's a very hefty film that has a lot to say, and I feel like we would probably have a lot to say about it, regardless of how we may or may not have felt about it. So I'm excited that this is episode 250. I'm excited you're back on the chair over there, buddy. All right. We start out every episode, guys, every review, I should say, by giving our score out of 10. We have not discussed it with each other, and then we will talk about it. It's what we call the early score reveal.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm going to score, and then I never score. It's not fair.
That was Ryan Gosling. Did you guys hear him? Yeah.
Dude, I was just watching that. I was waiting for you to join the call. That was so good.
Unbelievable.
So good. All right. Ryan Gosling on SNL doing Beavis, by the way, if you want to check that out. Look it up on YouTube. All right. Count us in, Nick. Let's give our scores out of 10 here, and then we'll dive into Civil War.
All right. Fine. 3, 2, 1. 7.
Bam.
9.
Bam.
Come on.
A 9.
I'm taking
out
all the
of
pages
10.
out of your book that are above an 8. From now on, you're banned from 8s and above for the foreseeable future.
Let's give the audio audience a 9 out of 10 from me and a 7 out of 10 from Nick. Puts us at an 8 overall from the P's, which I'm pleased with. Hey, I'm happy. You come back to the show after a couple weeks off, and we're in semi-agreement, and we're giving a really good score to a film that I think is a really good film.
Look, I don't know. Listen, it could be. It could be the Roadhouse factor of it all. Like that was the last movie I watched for the show. I still had such a bad taste in my mouth. Anything I watched would have looked great by comparison.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be.
That could be it.
You know, just it could be any number of things. You know, no, it's good. I think it's good.
Let's keep it spoiler free for a couple minutes. So
no,
carry on, Nick. This is going to be spoiler free. We will let you guys know when we get into spoilers for Civil War. So common thoughts here, Nick. What do you think?
It's good. And I think this just tunes right back into the discussion that we were having when we asked Brett's question earlier. Is he a better writer than a director? I think he's a far better director. I think this film is visually very compelling. I think there's some good performances in here, and like things like sound design, things like, again, like I said, the way that you're almost as an audience member thrust into the action along with the characters in this film at times, it really, really connects you to it in that sense. I don't think he's a strong writer, particularly in this film. I don't feel like any of these characters is particularly strong, so I'm not really attached to their journey per se. Like, I don't really get invested in any of them and any of their journeys as characters, and
Right.
that's a huge letdown for me, because I firmly believe, and I know I've mentioned this on the show before, even talking positively about films, like I rated it a positive score, but like, characters are the vehicle by which you experience or enjoy any kind of movie. If you don't have really well drafted, compelling characters on the page that are then delivered to the screen, then I'm not going to connect to it as much. And that was exactly the case here. Like, I watched it and I sat in the theater after it was over, and I just kind of felt like that was a movie I saw. I'm bumping it up another point or so, probably on top of the Dan Brennick It's Fine rating, to just like, because it is so visually well done, and it is so well done from a sound design standpoint and things like that. But I just why what is it with movies lately? And I mean, maybe this is just the taste that like Dune has left in my mouth and all this stuff, but with these nothing burgers of characters that just don't have any meat to them on the page, I just
Well, let me interject into the spoiler-free section here without giving too much away at the top, but I actually kind of agree with you in terms of the shallow writing when it comes to the character development in this movie. However, that didn't bother me. Obviously, I give it a 9 because I think that certain characters in this film being kind of shallow, like I said, and detached from the reality that's around them is part of the narrative and part of the story that we're seeing.
right.
Particularly with Kirsten Dunst's character and how she's just kind of the veteran photographer who's kind of somewhat seemingly maybe lost that drive that she had as a young photojournalist, like Cailee Spaany's character, and how they kind of mirror each other with, a couple decades in between them. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like this is a movie that, to your point, I agree with you about the character not being super deep, but I feel like that works for this type of movie because it's more about kind of what's going on around these characters. But at the same time, I did connect to really that whole group, like the core group, personally. Like, I kind of knew right away, like, what their point in the story was. Like, okay, Kirsten Dunst, kind of the elder photographer who's kind of over it, but she doesn't really have a choice, and she's stuck in this war zone, and like it's just all she knows, right? And Cailee Spaany's this newcomer who wants to prove her place, and she kind of worships Kirsten Dunst's character and wants to kind of be like her. So she's the novice and she's the protege, and then you have Wagner Moura, who I was not familiar with before this film, and I thought he did a great job as kind of like being in the middle, where he was a little bit of both of those characters. And then you have some other people you meet along the way. And I guess what I'm saying is the story and that kind of surrounding arc of the movie is what really fascinated me, more so than like caring about a character's backstory or like how they got there or anything like that. But I do understand what you're saying, because it's not a character heavy piece, right? It's more of almost like an action, kind of almost like horror movie, kind of a little bit when you think about it as an American citizen, at least. So I get what you're saying, but I guess it just didn't bother me as much as
I
apparently
think
it did for you.
it wouldn't have bothered me. We could tear down the spoiler wall after this. We'll get into some spoilers for the film after this point here, but I think I like that kind of film, and I can be invested in that kind of film. Dunkirk's that kind of film. Like, that's a masterpiece in my opinion, but it doesn't focus heavily on any of the characters. It's more about the event. It's more about the events taking place in the film. And I mean, like, I don't want to get into a Nolan versus Garland debate or anything like that here, but I don't think Garland handles it, especially with the deft pen, I would say, of a Nolan, because it does, if you can put the characters to the side and you're focused more on the events that are happening around them, then why do we have to get character scenes? Why do we have to get scenes that are obviously meant to be quieter moments between the characters
Right.
where we're meant to kind of attach to them? Because in those moments, especially, those moments don't work for me because I'm just not connecting to them. I'm just not feeling anything from those moments, from those characters. You know, I don't dislike those scenes altogether. I think that, you know, there was a little bit of meat on those bones, but I feel like it was too meager. I feel like when and spoilers, we're in the spoiler section now here, but when
Are we doing
Sammy
it?
dies, like, did you care? I didn't care when he died. Like, I really didn't care. I really didn't feel that invested in like that. Like, he's like the old timey journalist
I
who's
know.
going along for
Let
the
me
ride or whatever. Like,
let me
I just
use
didn't
let me use
care.
this as a different example. We are into spoilers, guys, just so you know.
This is about
But
Roadhouse. I swear to God.
no, it's not. I tell you what. Let's actually let Dan run a clip, a promo break, Nick, and then when we come back, we'll be full-fledged spoilers on Civil War. Producer Dan, roll it. All right, folks, like I said before the break, we're going to be full spoilers on Alex Garland's Civil War. So if you've not seen it, come back to the remaining portion of the podcast after you've seen it. Nick, to what you said before the break there, I want to point to a different scene that I think kind of illustrates what we're both saying. But when Wagner Moura's character is kind of comforting Cailee Spaeny, and she's sleeping in the back of the van, and he's kind of like, you know, he's smoking weed, and he's just kind of trying to chill her out or whatever. And that's a moment with those two characters connecting, right? Because he's basically saying, like, look, you know, I brought you in, I'm going to take care of you. Like, you're part of our team now, and kind of building that rapport with this girl who's probably scared to death. But the whole time, it's about their journey tomorrow, because there's, you know, gunfire going on in the distance, and they're going to go investigate what that is and, you know, be a part of the action, you know, which is what his character is all about, and really kind of what her character is all about too. So even that connection that they're making with each other is surrounded or is like generated by the event that they're both super interested in. And then, I don't know if you remember, but Garland hard cuts to them in the action with the shootout there at the whatever office building or whatever it was, between the Western forces, which they were with, and the American soldiers. And there's no time for us to kind of like reflect in the moment of their connection as this mentor, protege, whatever, because it cuts right to the action, and we're in a tense situation immediately. So I don't know. I feel like it was a conscious choice by Garland to get you to start kind of like connecting with them as characters, as friends, as, you know, coworkers, and then all of a sudden, like, you don't have time to think about it again because you're being shot at, and bombs are going off right next to you. You know what I mean? And as an audience member, it was kind of the same way, because I feel like it was survival of the fittest for these characters when they were in the war zone, and they didn't have time to get to know each other. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. So I think it's the same thing for us as the audience. Do you understand what I'm saying there or not?
I mean, it just didn't work for me. Maybe that was a
Yeah.
conscious choice by Garland. You know, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It doesn't work for me either way. Like, that choice doesn't work for me. I mean, either invest me in the characters so that their emotional journey takes me through the journey of the plot of the film, or focus on the plot of the film. Don't give me the character moments because I don't need them.
And then Sammy dying. That's a weird one. I'm conflicted with that one, because there was so much adrenaline in this kind of like war zone setting that his death did not sit with me. You're right. Like, it didn't weigh on me. I wasn't like emotionally like, oh, this sucks. I didn't cry. You know what I mean? Like, but I also feel like from their perspective, the show must go on. And that's kind of what, I mean, this is a short movie, dude. This is like an hour 50 or something like that. And it's a heavy film with heavy themes, and it's quick. You're in and out. So, but
I mean,
then
there's
if you
obviously
think about,
like a big point to make there about the way that Dunst's character has kind of dulled herself to violence and dulled herself to like the reactions to like all the violence to the point where she's pretty emotionless throughout the film.
I agree.
Like
I agree.
she's really, really emotionless throughout the film. And you have Cailee Spaeny's character, Jessie, goes through that kind of emotional transformation to where she's very, very emotional at first, seeing bodies and seeing all the messed up stuff that's happening as part of this war and everything like that. So she's really wide-eyed and kind of very naive in the beginning, and then she starts to kind of become more like Lee, Kirsten Dunst's character. She starts to adapt into that mindset of being a little bit hardened to it. And I mean, that definitely speaks to like this wider theme that Garland is clearly aiming for about the way that we as people desensitize ourselves to violence across the world. I mean, look how messed up things are at different places in the world these days, you know, with people dying and wars and all these different things. So I mean, I like that aspect of it, but I mean, like I would have wanted more of that. Like if it was an hour 50, give me 2 hours and give me another 10 minutes of just those characters developing along those lines. I mean, Wagner Moura doesn't really get a whole lot of development versus the two leads in the film, the two female leads. So he's a little bit more static, but just give me more of that evolution of those characters, and I would have appreciated a little bit more. Because when you get to the third act of the film, when you get like they're in DC and they're pressing their advance on the White House and everything, all of a sudden Kirsten Dunst's character kind of starts breaking down a little bit, and like all of a sudden it starts to be like really affected by everything going on around her. But it I didn't really see any flashes of that until very late in the movie. Like there's flashbacks that she has at different points in the movie to different other stuff that she photographed and like other horrifically violent events that she was right there to photograph. But the film doesn't necessarily make it clear if it's those images coming back to haunt her or if that was just like backstory that the film was giving us through this kind of narrative exposition of the camera and still images and things like that. I don't know. Like that whole thing comes out of left field for me in the last act of the film, where all of a sudden she starts kind of breaking down a little bit. I don't know.
I think that, and we can go ahead and talk about it now, but I think that a lot of that, what you're saying, because she did kind of almost become comatose in the kind of dissension on the White House there in the last act of the film. And I saw it as a direct result of all the shit that went down with the Jesse Plemons scene. That's the best way I can put it, because he owned that
she's
shit.
the one who married him.
Right. Why'd you marry this guy? But you mentioned Sammy's death, which, you know, happened because of that as well. And Cailee Spaeny's character, Jessie, who had kind of been taken under her wing and she felt kind of responsibility for, was essentially kidnapped and kind of in that position when they found her. And then I just think that all of that kind of caught up to her to where she wasn't just photographing it from afar or even up close. It was more like, oh, I'm involved in this now. And I almost died and people almost died, you know, that I care about almost died and like whatever. Let's talk about the Jesse Plemons scene while we're there, that part of the movie, because from that moment kind of goes to the final act and, you know, all the frontline warfare, if you will. But obviously the big talk of the film is this 5-minute scene. This guy is, I mean, I love him anyway. I love him. I mean, he showed up in Killers of the Flower Moon for like 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, he was barely in that movie, but he was so memorable. I'm just showing up here to see who's doing these murders, and like everybody's memeing it and quoting it. And now you have the same thing going on here in Civil War. I think I want to hear what you want to say about his scene. I think that this scene, and then there's a scene right before this where they show up at that, what used to be, I guess, like a holiday themed park or whatever. And they see the guys that are shooting at the other dudes in the building in the high rise. And they're kind of shooting back and forth.
There's like a sniper in the building or something like that. Yeah.
So I think that scene and the Jesse Plemons scene kind of encompass really what Garland was trying to say about the movie. What did you think of, because everybody's talking about the Jesse Plemons scene. What was your thought about that? Did you hear anything about that before you saw the movie?
I heard that it was like a really like great scene and he's like this crazy psychopath. But didn't y'all watch Breaking Bad? This is Todd.
That's true.
This is Todd from Breaking Bad. This is the kid. This is the dude that just cold-bloodedly like puts a slug in a kid. like because he
Yeah.
caught him stealing methylamine on the train.
Yeah.
Like this is like Todd who worked for his Nazi uncle, and
Mhm.
like I mean Todd. If you didn't think Jesse Plemons had this in him, like go watch
Yeah.
Breaking Bad, because that's like his entire character in season 5. Like
Yeah, he's
he's
a
just
sick
an
bastard.
absolutely just stone cold, like dead-eyed psychopath. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like they cast Jesse Plemons in that role because guess what? They already knew exactly that he could pull it off. Like with the
Yeah.
cold, like because he's got that innocent kind of demeanor to him where he doesn't seem threatening until he wants to be threatening, and then he's really threatening. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, Jesse Plemons is great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, he's great in the scene, but like it for me, like as somebody who loves Breaking Bad and loves him in it, like
Mhm.
this is not new ground for Jesse Plemons. This is they cast him very deliberately because they're like, you know that really creepy son of a bitch Todd from Breaking Bad. Can we get that guy for this scene? I wonder if that was literally the discussion. Well, I mean, Kirsten Dunst is the lead
Probably.
in the movie, so that was probably also another.
Well, I had heard in an interview
Kirsten,
or
what's
something.
Jesse up to these days? Can you get him for this scene quick?
I'm not kidding. I had read a few days ago or heard in an interview or something like that he was on set visiting her, like hanging out with her basically for a few days. And they're like, well, we have to film this scene and we don't have a soldier for it yet. And Jesse's like, I'll do it. And they fucking put him in the movie.
because some random person was sitting there while he's like over at catering eating dinner with his wife or
Yeah.
whatever, and they're like, "Isn't that creepy bastard Todd from Breaking Bad? Wouldn't he be perfect as that soldier guy that we need this one quick part here,
Nailed
this one
it.
scene?" Like, yeah,
Nailed it.
I love the scene. Like the scene's really good and it's really menacing and it's really harrowing.
Yeah.
Although the lead up to that scene before the scene, like with the racing cars with the racing journalists. Dumbest shit I've ever seen in a movie. It's so stupid. It's so bad. It's
Yeah, it was a
so
way to get them
obviously
there, but
it's so obviously a setup to pull Jessie out of that car to then put her in an obvious kind of danger. Like Garland, again, this is why the answer is director when writer. Like that scene is so contrived, it's ridiculous. And like it took me a minute to get into that Jesse Plemons scene just because like as soon as the car disappeared like over in the distance, I'm just like, oh, they're gonna get kidnapped or some dumb nonsense. You watch. Like I'm like that whole thing was a setup for this thing to happen in the movie. Like
right.
that's
I can see
so
that too.
aggravating to me. That's so come on, come on, Garland.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so for me, we're talking about the Jesse Plemons scene, and his famous. Well, I think it's going to be a famous line. Is well, what kind of American are you? Because they say there's some confusion. We're American, and then he says, well, what kind of American are you? I think that simple line and that scene, unfortunately, at least for me, unfortunately, encompass kind of like where we are in America. I think that it is a tough time in this country to just exist, like to just be an American, to just be an American citizen. Like you have to have an affiliation or you have to know who we voted for or like, do you know what I mean? Everything seems so divisive right now. And I feel like Jesse Plemons' character in that scene was kind of portraying that through the voice of one person, like.
So what you're telling me is if Jesse Plemons' character went to watch this movie in the theater, he would be one of the people that's pissed off that it doesn't tell you why they're fighting, what the war started over, what side the other people are on. Yeah, Jesse Plemons' character would be that guy. Yeah, okay.
I think so.
I could buy that.
And I think so. And further into that scene when his character's like, he finds out that I can't even remember. I think I know Kirsten Dunst was from Colorado, and I think she was from Missouri.
Jesse's
right?
from Missouri, and Wagner Moura's character was from Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jesse Plemons is like, hell yeah, now that's American, And then when he finds out the guy's from Hong Kong, but he's clearly he's been in America for quite a while, but he finds out his roots are from China, he kills him. And I think that's what I'm saying is that there's just so many polarizing views in the country right now that are kind of in the mindset that Jesse Plemons' character was in this movie. And there's also another scene that I mentioned that I want to touch on real quick that happens a couple beats before that with the two soldiers that are shooting at the building across the way, and they're kind of shooting each other. And Wagner Moura is trying to figure out, like, are you guys Western forces? Like, can we film you? Like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, what's your affiliation? And the guy's like, look, shut up. They're trying to kill us. We're trying to kill them. And that's it. That's as simple as that soldier kind of sees it, right? And I just think there's such an unfortunate time in America right now where you just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not trying to get super political on the show, and I honestly don't even know your affiliation, and frankly, I don't really care because I love you, and that's my point. But, like, in the 90s, because I was born in 75. I grew up in the 80s, but I didn't really know much about politics. But high school in the 90s, college in the 90s, you say you're Republican or whatever, and that's fine. It's because of, like, financial agenda or college tuition or healthcare or whatever. But now it's like, if you say it, it's like, okay, you're Republican, but are you Trump Republican? Or are you, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you can't just be what you are. Is any of this making sense? Like, I feel like those scenes kind of encompass what I'm trying to say.
It makes sense. It definitely makes sense. I just, I mean, it is an annoyingly divisive time in the country. Unfortunately, it just is one of those things. I find the discourse around this film to be really, really fascinating, that there's just a subset of people who literally can't get past the fact that the film doesn't wear its politics boldly on its chest.
Right.
And I'm gonna come at you with the hottest take of hot takes, but if you're listening to this and if you're that person, I think people that want to attach an agenda to this movie just want to do it because they want a grandstand and virtue signal from their own chosen political agenda. Like, you want to hear that it's a Republican bad guy, so that way you can rah Democrat or vice versa. Like, I think that's the only reason why people want to know what started the war in the film. Like, it's like why is Michael Myers, like, if when somebody like Rob Zombie remakes this movie in 20 years and they give the whole backstory on the war and then they explain the hell out of the whole thing and ruin it, just like they did with Michael Myers and Rob Zombie's Halloween. Like, who's Michael Myers? He's a dude stabbing people. Like, you don't need to know anything more about him. Like, be within the context and within the frame of reference and the events of the film. Like, I really, really feel like people who are, like, really pissed off that it doesn't attach itself to a specific political identity are because they want to get on board with the film and be like, yeah, you suck
They
blue
can't
party, you suck red party.
I agree. They can't be invested in something unless it supports their agenda, and that kind of is what I'm talking about. That just creates that divisive nature that's kind of running through the blood of the country right now.
You want to know what my agenda is, G? You want to know what my agenda is? You want to know what my affiliation is? Be fucking good to people. Be kind to other people and put good things out in the world and try to make the world a better place. That's the only thing that matters in this world. That's literally the only thing that matters. You're here for a finite amount of time. Try to make the world a better place. Try to be a good person. Be good. Treat other people with kindness and respect, and shut the hell up about the rest of it. That's how I feel about it.
I agree with you. Well said. And I think that what Garland does here too, and obviously the performances, but I think what Garland does here too is that it doesn't matter what your affiliation is when it comes to wartime. Like, we're all casualties of war if our country or our people are involved in that war.
There's a futility of war, like that Garland is definitely trying to eschew in this film. There's a futility to the whole thing. If you're watching a war in which you have no stakes, if you're just watching a war on television, or if you're watching a war in photographs, Gerald, like in this film, like you're watching photojournalists and you're seeing the snapshots that they're taking that you're going to see in a Time magazine, like the Civil War reflected, like a journey in photographs or something like that.
Right.
Like, Kirsten Dunst's character has a great line in the movie where she says something to the effect of, we don't react. We don't have an emotional reaction to it. We just shoot it and let the people looking at it have the emotional reaction. We don't react to it. Like, that's how she kind of puts that divide amongst herself. But like, it has that commentary about when you're watching a war from afar, you're just reading about a war in pictures, or you're just looking at video images of it, or whatever the case may be, about how detached we've all become from this idea of it, and the fact that it's human goddamn beings dying. and people ultimately, like, if you don't know what the stakes are and you're just watching people brutally murder each other, then aren't you that person that's war, good God, y'all, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Like,
Right.
that's like, and that's what I took away from this. Ultimately, it's just like, it's such a futility of it, such an absolute futility of it. That's why some people want to know desperately, so they can put a bad guy. There's a bad guy. It's like when you watch a World War II movie and you see a Nazi. It's like, oh, gotta shoot the Nazi. Like, you're gonna feel better when you see the good guys shoot the Nazis.
Yeah,
that's what people want in this movie. They want to see the bad guys getting gunned down.
Yeah, but in this case, the war's the bad guy, and the really the whole movie is the bad guy. I mean, and photojournalism and war photojournalists specifically have always like been just incredibly fascinating to me because they're risking their entire lives, like kind of like what you said,
man,
to have a record of history, right? And especially like a visual history that we couldn't get in the 1700s, 1800s, whatever. And to have that and to pass that down for literally generations for the rest of our time on Earth is just a valiant, like, courageous profession that I could never fucking even attempt to do. So to say that I'm in awe of them would be an understatement. But I think that Garland also kind of brings that out, and along with some of the dialogue, like you mentioned from Lee's character, it's just they're not there because they're Republican or because they're Democrat or because they want this person to, beat this person, or they're there to record the historical things that are playing out so that we can have that as our record for X number of years to come. So I think that's why the affiliation and who started the war and who won the war and all that crap doesn't matter, because that's for the history books, right? Which is not what this movie is. This movie is about capturing it. So I really appreciate the neutrality of it, honestly, because if it wasn't neutral and it was leaning one way or the other, then that's all you're going to hear about. There's going to be Fox News panels of like
the entire discourse of the film. That would literally be the entire discourse of the entire film. And like I said, if you want to know that, it's because you want to make somebody in this movie the bad guy, so you know who to cheer for, and if the good guy or the bad guy aligns with your political ideology, so you can get pissed off about it. Like, instead of like you're watching human beings get goddamn murdered and shot and killed. Like, that's what matters here, not what political affiliation they are.
I will say what's fascinating is I remember seeing this trailer. I actually did a trailer reaction on the YouTube channel for this when it
you do
dropped
trailer
a few
reactions?
months ago. No, I don't.
Okay.
I did for this one though. But I remember when I saw it and the poster and the marketing materials, like, I did think, oh shit, this looks like the January 6th insurrection. This looks like it's going to be political. Trump's people are going to be pissed off. Whoever is on the wrong side of the storytelling is going to be pissed off. So to see the movie and be like, oh, it never really says what the kind of influence was to create the narrative or whatever, I thought was really refreshing. And I think that whether you're on the right or the left, this is a movie that's literally neutral. Like, you can look at the movie as a depiction of wartime and what it would be like if the Civil War, or if the war was happening on our turf, which of course has happened before, but a lot of us, can't remember it or weren't around when it happened. So that's the takeaway, is like, war is horror. Whether it doesn't matter who you voted for, it doesn't matter who you support. If there's a war going on in your backyard and your neighbors are dying as a result of it, nobody cares who you voted for. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that the way that story was told from that neutral perspective was genius, in my opinion. It's another reason why I gave this movie a 9, because I'm a liberal, but if it had leaned left, this would not have been a 9 for me. I'll just tell you. I probably would have liked it. I mean, I probably would have enjoyed the movie.
Would have been like a 12.
It would have been.
He'd have been in this whole review. This whole review would have been Gerald just cheering about Republicans getting gunned down or something.
But I just think it made sense that it was a neutral to get you to focus on the fact that no matter who you are, where you come from, who you
Because you're
voted
focused
for,
on the event
etc.,
itself and
yeah,
not the ideology behind what
exactly,
has driven it. You're focused on the event
exactly.
itself. And when you look at war through that lens, when you look at war through the lens of there's no good guy or bad guy, there's no clear line that you can draw, there's no clear side that you can put yourself on. When you look at war through that lens, war looks pretty goddamn shitty, doesn't it?
Hmm.
You know, and I think of all the, like, and that's why the film gets a 7 from me. Like, even though I didn't jive with the characters all that much, and I could have done without some of the character scenes or done with more of them, one of the two. I really, really think that I appreciated Garland's approach in that sense. So that's why it gets the 7 from me.
Before we wrap up here and get to the wheel, because we got to spin the wheel, I'm curious because you said the characters were not the strongest part of the movie for you. However, taking Jesse Plemons out of the equation, I am curious which performance from the craft of acting you thought was the best in this movie. And I wonder if it's the same as me. So I just want to ask you.
I'm going to say Dunst.
Man, I'm going to go Cailee Spaeny.
I'm going to say Dunst. And I don't even, like, listen, I love Kirsten Dunst, but I don't necessarily rate her as like a big time actress. But I think she pulled off that stoic, you know, aged combat reporter who has just shut herself off from the violence and the brutality of the things that she's witnessing for so long that she's kind of numb to it. And then where it kind of starts to affect her, even though the way it affects her doesn't 100% work for me. I think it's just too much of a last act thing. I don't think the film needs it at all. Like, I really don't think the film needs it at all, you know, but
it's funny you mentioned that real quick before I talk about Cailee, but there's a scene early on when Lee saves Jesse, basically saves her life in that one scene when the suicide bomber runs into the crowd.
Yep.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but like Lee is like emotionless. Like, she's literally like nothing's happening. She's like, all this is blowing up around her. So that was a beautiful choice that was made, I'm assuming, by Dunst and probably in the screenplay to like make her that kind of character who's kind of numb to what's going on around her.
Yeah, for sure.
Because she's seen it so much. And to your point, for me, the best performance was Cailee Spaeny. And I'll just say, I mean, she played Priscilla last year, Priscilla Presley, in a very, very different kind of film. That film was super like kind of mediocre for me, but I have my eyes on her. Like, I think she is going to be, she's just a rising actress. And in this movie, she started as that character who had their life saved that we were just talking about, to essentially the arc that we get to at the end of the movie where she's much more like Lee's character, where she's also lacking that emotion to just get the shot, you know? And this person who was like a mother figure to her is basically dying right in front of her, and her initial reaction is to just get the shot, and which is kind of what Dunst taught her throughout the movie. So I thought it was a beautiful arc for that character. Like, the most growth in this movie went through Jesse, I think.
For sure.
And I thought Cailee Spaeny did a great job at kind of portraying those different emotions and kind of like levels that she had to level up to get to kind of what at least what this movie paints wartime photojournalists to be, which is just be there in the moment, capture the moment. You know what I mean? Like, she finally got there at the end of the movie, I feel like. And I thought she was beautiful in this film. And I'm really hooked on her. I can't wait to see what she does next. I think the Cailee Spaeny assance is on us. So I'm all about it.
She's good. I mean, she's real good. She's real good.
Yeah. Did you see Priscilla last year, by the way? Or no? Yeah, okay. Yeah, she's really great in that too. All right, so any final thoughts on Civil War before we get to this damn wheel over here I got to spin?
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10 from Nick, and 9 out of 10 from me, which, if anybody's keeping score at home, I dropped a
Is that the best film of the year?
No, because I dropped a dime on Dune Part 2, and you fucking know that.
No,
you gave me shit
combined,
about it.
the combined score, is that the best of the year? I think it is.
8 out of 10?
Because I gave Dune Part 2 a 5, which is too high in retrospect.
Bitch. I'm never going to forgive you for that.
I need to lower it. That film, why is it doing so good budget-wise? That means I'm going to be forced to watch another one of these garbage Dune movies.
Because it is a literal visual masterpiece.
Oh yeah, if it was just a silent movie and you didn't have to listen to these characters have development. I don't know if that's Frank Herbert's fault or if it's Denis Villeneuve's fault, but it's somebody's fault.
You son of a bitch.
I don't know
I'll
how you
tell
can
ya.
assemble that cast with that much talent, and they even give they are ringing like they're on the desert planet of Arrakis, and there's one drop of water in that washcloth, and they're ringing it out with their performances. They're good
Guys.
at their craft, but
He's back on
but
Dune too.
they can't save it.
I
That's-
can't fuck with you.
That's-
I disagree, sir.
This is the film of this is the top movie of the year
Yeah,
so far.
I think it is from the P's. Yeah, I mean
Yeah, I
it's
think
visually striking. I think the performances for what they were supposed to be, which was not focused on them, but focused more on what they were going through, were tremendous. Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I loved it.
No,
I think
don't.
You mentioned the sound design. Sound design is incredible. Cinematography with those like the flare lights and stuff that he would do with the background explosions and shit. Like, I mean, the guy knows what he's doing, and this is I saw this in IMAX too, so this is one of the best experiences of the year for me. It's one of those that sits with you, where you kind of go, "Am I supposed to like this as much as I do?" But I did, So
Civil
I enjoyed
War?
Civil War. All right, there you
Yeah,
go.
it's-
8 out of 10.
I really, it's like it was good.
It
It was one step above copyright Dan Brennick. It's fine.
All right, Nick. So you know what we got to do? We got to spin the wheel and
Spin
next
that wheel,
week's-
Gerald. Spin
What? What was that? What kind of beer are you drinking tonight?
This is my home brew. This is the one I made last year for live stream, so it's been sitting there for years. So it's been
Fucking 70
fermenting,
ABV or what's going on?
maybe a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I don't drink anymore. It doesn't matter how big I am. I don't drink anymore. So I drink like 2 beers. I'm on the floor. So
YouTube audience will know, but the sex cult leader's upside down right now. But we're getting ready to spin the wheel. So
as he
how
often
it
is.
how it works is Nick gets a choice. Okay, I get a choice, and then our Patreon members, we have about 28 or so patrons right now. They get to put a movie in the hat
Thank
for
you.
us, and if it's not one that we have reviewed yet, we will review it on the show next week. We're not doing a new release, but we are doing one of our retro roulette reviews. All right, so let's see who it lands on, Nick, and what we have to deal with here as we spin the wheel. Okay. I don't think it's landed on me yet, has it?
Yeah,
Before
because we
spin
got Unforgiven.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. Well, I'm not as bitter then. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, spin. All right, come on, baby. Come to daddy. Come to the sex cults. You. All right, well, look. It landed on Nick for the audio audience, just so everybody knows. But that's the bad news. The good news is there's no more Tommy Wiseau directed films, so I don't think we can cover anything else from him. Wow.
Why is that the bad news?
That's the good news. The bad news it landed on you and not me. The good news is Tommy Wiseau's filmography has already been covered on the show, so you're going to have to really do some thinking here.
Unless we can find a screening of Big Shark sometime in the next week. I don't know.
No. All right, what do you got, man? You need a second to think about it, or?
Yeah, I got to think. Hang on, let me think. I'm trying to think
Dan
of
can
something
take all
that'll
this
tie into like our next like our future stuff we've got to.
We're doing
got coming up.
Challengers with Zendaya in a couple weeks.
Let me look at the list. Let me look at the list here really quick.
Ooh, The Fall Guy with Gosling. We're doing that one.
Because I'll theme it to whatever we're gonna be doing. All right, so Gerald, I've got a question for you. You're gonna determine the pick. I got 2 picks, one in each hand here.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna determine the pick for next week. Now, I want you to pick either desert or forest. Desert or forest. You got to pick one of the two, desert or forest.
I've never heard of those. Who stars in this?
That's not, you got to pick one, and based on the context of that is what we're gonna watch. Okay.
Well, desert leads me to believe maybe you're doing something Dune related, but I don't think you'd do that to yourself, would you? I'll say forest. Hit me with the forest.
Okay, Gerald. So you picked forest, so that means next week on the show, because we've got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming up in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing the first film in the reboot trilogy. We're doing Rise of the Planet of the Apes from 2011, I think was when that movie came out. I put the 3 movies. I didn't want to condemn us to watch all 3. Number one, because you can't talk about all 3 in one episode.
True.
Because Dawn is literally a masterpiece in my opinion. But We're going to talk about the first one. We're going to talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes, kind of get ourselves in ape mode. If you would have picked desert, we would have been watching Mad Max Fury Road, but you decided no, you didn't want the desert.
Okay.
Because Furiosa's coming at the end of next month.
That
so
Furiosa is coming.
No, but you didn't care. You didn't care enough. No, you didn't care.
I mean, I thought it was Dune, and I'm like, is he gonna do David Lynch's Dune? What the fuck's going on over there?
I will not. Like, I'm going to be
torture.
I already feel myself getting sick the week that Dune Part 3, Dune Forever, or whatever the hell it's going to be called.
You'll be there. You'll be there. All right. Well, next week, what are we doing? Rise of the Planet of the Apes, you said?
Rise of the Planet of the Apes from 2011.
All right. So we'll get into, as it's coming back in a few weeks, and we'll be reviewing the new film. We'll get into that mode, like you said. So next week, our retro roulette review will be Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And then we'll be back out to the cinema the following week because we're going to go see Zendaya in her new steamy love triangle thriller called Challengers. I'm looking forward to that one.
Now, I actually had an opportunity in the love triangle, right?
I wish. I actually had an opportunity to see that one or Civil War at a screener, and they were on the same night. I'm like, come on, guys. Help me out here. I mean, I know it's first world problems, but like, dude. So I picked Civil War because I knew we were covering it on the show. So Zendaya, if you're listening, I apologize, but I can't wait to see you play tennis in that film. All right. Nicholas, I'm so glad you're back, man. Thanks for being here again and to discuss Civil War. And we kind of agreed, so that's refreshing as well. But we'll get together next week.
Dangerous precedent to set.
We'll talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes
when we do that kind of thing. You know what, I Gerald, I am going to be going not this week, but next week.
Yeah.
Did you know that the 25th anniversary of one of the greatest movies ever made is coming up in like a week?
Don't tell me. What year is it? It's 24. So this 25th anniversary. 99?
Yeah.
Matrix?
Nope.
99. It's not The Matrix. One of the greatest movies ever made in 99? Give me a hint.
I am a librarian.
The fuck?
Come on. Stephen Summers, The Mummy, Gerald. Come on.
Oh,
what are you? Who are you?
I never got. That's definitely not one of the greatest movies ever made. You hyped it up a bit much.
Excuse you.
You hyped it up a bit much, sir. One of the greatest movies ever. Come on. All right.
Excuse you.
On that note, by the way, I had my glasses on.
That's what I should have picked as the retro review, but it's after I'm seeing it. Like, that'll be next week's episode, but I won't see it in theaters until the week after that. So
yeah, don't do that.
That should have been it. And if you gave it less than a 10 out of 10, I would have quit the show right then and there.
It definitely would not have been a 10 out of 10.
Wow. You give garbage like Dune a 10 out of 10.
Especially on a rewatch? What are you kidding me?
Lord.
All right.
Wow. I'm telling M from Verbal Diorama, she's getting on a plane right now. She's going to come straight to North Carolina and beat
it's okay. I mean, it's all right. I mean, I'm not going to put it as one of the greatest movies. All right, we got to wrap this up. All right. Once again, your horrible takes are segueing us off the episode.
God. Horrible takes. People coming for Gerald. People are coming for Gerald for The Mummy. Don't you even dare. People are coming for you for that take. People are going to be on my side. One time ever in the history of this show, it's going to be that take right there.
I don't know. Man, that homebrew's doing something to you. I'll tell you that. All right, Nick, let's get together next week, man. Let's talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I hope you have a good week, brother. I will see you then. Thanks for being here, as always.
Apes together strong, Gerald.